Everyone, in this video, I want to show you everything that's new in Cortex 2.1. Now, it might feel like I just did one of these release recap videos, and that's because it kind of did. It wasn't that long ago. Um, it's actually only been about a month and a half since we released Cortex 2.0, um, and we've just been adding so much to Cortex that it didn't seem right to leave it for another month to release Cortex 2.1. So this does mean that in Cortex 2.1, we don't have everything that we may have promised originally was going to go into Cortex 2.1. All of that stuff still planned. It'll make it into Cortex 2.2, which will be in about a month or a month and a half. And this is kind of the first release of our accelerated release cadence. For a long time, we were releasing every other month. Then we took a bit of a break. Gearing up to release 2.0. Um, but now we're just adding so much stuff that we want to release more often. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to update every single month or every other month. You can still update when you want to. If you don't need anything that's in one of these newer releases, you're more than welcome to stay on the release that you're currently on. If you want to upgrade, you're also more than welcome to do that. Again, you're under no obligation to upgrade to any particular version, and you can stay on the version that works for you. Now, with that, I want to show you what's in Cortex 2.2. And if you have any questions on any of this, remember you can always come ask at our Cortex users group or on our Cortex Discord server. Both are linked down in the description below. Now, let's talk about Cortex 2.1. First off, I want to mention a couple features that don't really make for good demos. One is that we added support for Windows authentication when you're using IIS. So you can turn on Windows authentication, disable anonymous authentication in the IIS manager configuration, and flip authentication type in Cortex to Windows, and it will use the currently logged in user for its authentication context. And everything else will continue to work. So if you were using Windows Auth with Cherwell, that might be a good option for you. And if you want to use Windows authentication with some of the other Cortex features, uh, you can do that as well. We also fixed a few issues that you may not have noticed. One, for instance, if I switch to the demo screen, is that some of these items on the left-hand side might have started out expanded, and you couldn't actually collapse them, which made for a very interesting experience. So we fixed that. But we've done a lot that we can actually show. So let's start with things that have to do with the integration platform, which is what it was the mail monitor. You can still just do mail monitoring with Cortex, but we're starting to call it the integration platform because it's doing a lot more than just monitoring mailboxes for new incoming mail messages, and then creating records in other systems. We're integrating with many other systems, handling data traversing from one system to another, doing automations based on that, some of it which is in Cortex 2.1. So let's just take a look at some things. So first off, we have this dashboard uh, on the homepage if you're running in mail monitoring mode. If you're running Cortex as a Cherwell archive, you continue to see the search page as your homepage. But if you don't have a Cherwell database connected to Cortex, you'll see this new dashboard. And it just shows some standard statistics: number of messages processed today, number of messages failed processing over all time that are still failed, and the number of active monitors. So in my case, I have no active monitors, but I processed 48 messages today. Now, another thing that we've added is in the email monitoring section. If I go into a monitor, you can see I have this monitor that I've been playing around. I think I showed it in a previous video. I'm going to drill into some of the rules that I created, some of the actions, and let's look at this update a variable one. And we can see inside my update a variable, we have line containing X. So we've added modifiers. And in a lot of these cases, text after X, text before X, text between X and Y, things between, a beginning HTML tag and an ending HTML tag, for example. But in Cortex 2.1, we specifically added line containing X, which is useful if you have a really long email and you're just looking for, in my case, I'm looking for the email address. It could be anywhere in the email, um, because this particular email address that I'm looking for is actually in the body of the email, not the to or the from. And I'm looking for has requested access. I could easily just look for the @ sign, instead of looking for an email address, but we've added that modifier. We also added support for saving data locally. So if we look at create a record, I'm actually creating a record in the data source platform. So again, this is becoming an integration platform. So I'm actually saving a contact record inside of Cortex. And what that looks like is I have an object called contact, and I created it through a blueprint, which if I go to that one, add contact table, here's the contact table, and it comes with grids and forms that I can define. So we're adding support for that, and that will continue to improve in Cortex 2.2. We also addressed some issues with plain text in HTML, especially when some emails have just an HTML body, some emails have just a plain text body, so that basically there will always be a plain text body, even if there was only an HTML body in the original message. We automatically convert it to plain text so that we can do some checks on it. We can also run actions directly against, let's look at incident. So we can run actions directly against uh, platform data records. So here I don't have any actions that run against incidents, but I can create an action right here. I can add some steps and so on and so forth. Create a new business object. There are actually some different step types that you get access to when you're creating an action here versus when you're creating a mail monitoring action, just because there are some things that make sense when you're dealing with email that don't make sense when you're dealing with effectively database records. Now, keep in mind, data sources could be anything. They could be coming from your Halo instance. They could be coming from a different ITSM platform. They could be coming from an API. They are all just different data sources, but we present them as records so that you can work with them however you want to within Cortex. Let's see. What else did we do? We added support for being able to update records, including from Halo. So in 2.0, you could only create new records in Halo. We added an update a record action in some of these steps so that you can update, for instance, a Halo ticket. Now, we didn't just add stuff to um, the integration platform side of things. We also made some changes on the Cherwell archive side of things. And let's pull up that demo site so that I can show you what we added there. So here we have our standard demo site, and you actually see in the bottom corner. Actually, it might be cut off on the recording here, but it's actually flipped to 2.2 alpha because we're now starting to work on 2.2. But everything I'm about to show you did ship in Cortex 2.1. So what do we have that's new? Well, we have a way to see your email monitor configurations. So you can look at demo monitoring and look at the different configurations that have been added here. Here's an action that's reopen incident, change approved, and so on and so forth, and what it does. So identify customer, identify existing record, right? The two main components of the kind of the additional functionality, aside from just the general automation that came from the Cherwell side of things. Now, keep in mind, this is Cherwell email monitors. This is not Cortex email monitors, so separate from the integration platform side of things. We also added some new stuff on the BizHub forms to make it work a little bit more like Cherwell. So one example is we've added support for um, what I think in Cherwell was called rich text zoom. So basically, we show a larger view of the HTML box. It's not very interesting on incident. It's a little more interesting if we go look at something like knowledge article. Here we have an HTML um, view, and we can see the entire thing, and it takes up the full screen, right? Now, if we go back to incident, we can see a few other things that we added, which include this related item picker, basically go to record button. So this just pulls up the employee or the customer that was linked to that incident in its full BizHub form arrangement view. It's basically the exact same form view that you would see if you searched for or browsed to this employee record, but you can get to it from the incident. And that's present on any related item picker. If it was defined on your form as a related item picker, um, you have this button. I think that's actually what this button was intended for, but of course that button runs a one step, and we didn't want to uh, be able to run one steps because they do potentially dangerous things. We also added a utility which isn't visible on this demo screen because it actually writes out to the local file system. But we added a little utility that exports all of the attachments from a shareable database. Now, in order to get access to that, you do have to have a valid license for Cortex. And there might be a couple other things you need to have in place, but you definitely need to have a valid license for Cortex. That's not something that's available in the trial. That might actually be the first feature that we made unavailable when you're running Cortex in trial mode. Everything else that I'm showing is available to you in trial mode. We also added a few behind the scenes things like uh, the associated field value system function, some information for user specific system functions, which here's an example. This user actually doesn't exist in Cherwell, so a lot of the information that would come from those user specific system functions is actually blank because this isn't a Cherwell user, right? There is a way to kind of provide default values for that, and you can actually map new users to existing users. So let's say, for sake of argument, I want a demo user to be able to see everything as if they were, Henry or Emma or something like that. Um, I can actually go into the administration interface, which again is not visible on this demo system. I can go to the administration interface and say demo user should basically act like Emma. Uh, and then if I went to this screen, I would see full name is Emma Carson, I think is her last name in the demo content. Default team name is whatever team ID, manager name, and so on and so forth. You would basically be as if I had logged in as Emma. Um, Aside from the security group side of things. The security group side of things is still its own thing. This is just to provide values for the system functions. Um, Other things that we added. If I go back to an incident um, and go to a journal, this used to, if I double click this used to go to the journal. It used to change the page, which meant that in order to get back to the incident, you had to click back. Now it just opens up in that modal, just like the related item picker. And then I can close the modal and I'm right back at the incident. So it doesn't have to load anything new. Let's see, what else did we add? Pop-ups, system functions. Yeah, more pop-ups. We fixed a few bugs. There were some issues with SAML not redirecting properly. It kind of lost your state. So if you got logged out, you would try to log in again and it would force you back to the home page. That's not the case anymore. You'll just go right back to whatever you were looking at beforehand. We also fixed an issue where plain text fields were losing their line breaks. So if you had, say, a plain text email, or let's see if I have a text box somewhere here. I don't have anything with a value, but if you had a text box, I know this is a rich text field, but if this were a text box and it had a bunch of line breaks in it, those were actually getting lost and all the text was getting smashed together. That's not the case anymore. We're now showing all of those line breaks, and it should look exactly the way it did in Cherwell. And let's see, a few other just fixes, just general minor bug fixes, quality of life things, things that you may not notice on your content. If you don't have your content structured a specific way, you never would have run into those bugs. But if you did run into those bugs, you know it because we talked about it, and that's why we fixed it. And now it's in there in 2.1. So if you were experiencing any issue that you have talked to me about, it is probably fixed in 2.1, especially if I sent you an email saying that it is definitely fixed in 2.1. Um, but all that to be said, that's 2.1. There's a lot in it. There's actually a lot that I didn't talk about, either because it's hard to demo, kind of behind the scenes stuff, or it's just general improvement. It'll feel better. The system will just feel better, but it's hard to explain. Um, and we've got even more planned for 2.2. We just continue to knock out tickets, bugs that have been reported, features that have been requested, the things that we want to add to the system. We're using the system internally, especially as an integration platform, to run our operations. So if you want to know more about that, you should come to the Cortex users group every Tuesday, 10 a.m. Pacific, link in the description. Ask us about how we're using Cortex internally, and we can certainly tell you about it. We might not be able to show it because it has some customer data, but we can certainly tell you how we're using Cortex and some of the things that we're adding in Cortex 2.2. And of course, we will make videos of those features when those come out. So thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one. I'm excited for Cortex 2.1. Go download it. There's a download link down in the description below. If you have questions, leave them down in the comments or schedule some time, book some time on my calendar. Again, all the links are down in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you very, very soon.